the shimmering surface of the Red Sea, in waters so warm and salt-laden they seem to belong to another world, lies one of the most concentrated arsenals of predation on the planet. Here, dazzling coral gardens and jewel-bright reefs conceal a relentless, unending war, where every ripple of movement is a hunt and every hiding place is a trap, and where beauty itself has been weaponized into camouflage, venom, and speed. In these depths you will encounter the stonefish, invisible until the instant of its lethal strike, the lionfish cloaking deadly spines beneath hypnotic fins, Moray eels that lash from darkness with a second set of hidden jaws, cone snails firing venom-tipped harpoons, sea snakes carrying toxins that dwarf their land-bound cousins, barracuda, reef sharks, and masters of deception waiting motionless on the sand. This is a journey into an ecosystem where every creature is a specialist in killing or surviving, an evolutionary battlefield where a single mistake means death, and where the most beautiful waters on Earth hide the deadliest predators nature has ever engineered. Beneath the surface of one of the saltiest, warmest bodies of water on Earth lies a world that should not exist. The Red Sea, a narrow trench of ocean wedged between the deserts of Africa and Arabia, receives almost no rainfall, no major rivers, and endures temperatures that would sterilize lesser waters. Yet, against every expectation, it teems with life so dense and so varied that it rivals the most celebrated reefs on the planet. More than 1,000 species of fish glide through its channels, over 200 kinds of coral build cathedral cities along its walls, and a significant fraction of these creatures exist nowhere else in the world. This is a sea sealed off by geography and forged by isolation, and that isolation has bred a menagerie of specialists so peculiar and so refined that the entire ecosystem functions like a closed laboratory of evolution, running experiments in survival that have played out over millions of years. To the casual eye, the Red Sea is paradise rendered in impossible color. Sunlight pierces water of extraordinary clarity, illuminating reefs that blaze in electric blues, molten oranges, and shimmering violets. Schools of anthias hover above the coral like clouds of drifting embers. Parrotfish crunch calmly through the reef structure, and clownfish nestle within the swaying tentacles of their host anemones. It is a spectacle of serenity, a postcard of tranquility that draws divers from every corner of the globe. But this beauty is a mask, and beneath its dazzling surface lies a truth far older and far darker than the tourists ever suspect. Every color has a purpose, every pattern is a message, and in this crowded, sunlit arena, that message is almost always the same. Approach at your own peril, for within these waters, beauty and lethality are not opposites, they are the same currency. The vivid hues that seem so decorative are, in reality, warnings, disguises, and lures. The lionfish trails its feathery fins like a Victorian dancer, and each of those flowing spines carries venom capable of causing agonizing pain. The stonefish, ugliest and most invisible of all, lies buried in the sand wearing the costume of a rock, waiting with the deadliest venom of any fish on Earth pressed into the dorsal spines along its back. The gentle-seeming cone snail creeps across the seabed in a shell so prized by collectors that people have carried it in their palms, unaware that within lurks a harpoon loaded with a cocktail of toxins that can kill an adult human in minutes. In the Red Sea, the loveliest things are frequently the last things a careless creature ever sees. This is the great paradox that defines these waters. The very richness of life that makes the reef so vibrant also makes it a battlefield of unrelenting intensity. Space is limited, food is contested, shelter is a matter of life and death. And so every organism, from the smallest cleaner shrimp to the largest cruising shark, is locked in a perpetual struggle that never pauses and never forgives. There is no idle drifting here, no leisurely existence. Behind the calm choreography of the reef lies a ceaseless calculation of hunger and fear, of ambush and escape, of who will eat and who will be eaten before the sun sinks below the desert horizon. The peace you see is only the peace of predators too patient to reveal themselves and prey too frightened to move. And this is precisely the world we are about to descend into. Over the course of this journey, we will move beyond the surface spectacle and into the machinery of survival itself, unveiling the Red Sea's most dangerous inhabitants and the astonishing tools they have evolved to dominate their world. For the central truth of this ecosystem is that here, in these isolated depths, every single creature is a specialist. Some are specialists in predation, armed with speed, stealth, venom, or overwhelming force. Others are specialists in defense, cloaked in camouflage, sheathed in spines, or protected by toxins so potent that no predator dares to test them. But make no mistake, whether hunter or hunted, each one carries a deadly arsenal, and each one has refined that arsenal to a level of precision that borders on the miraculous. Consider the Moray eel, coiled within the crevices of the reef like a serpent waiting in a cave, its jaws lined with backward curving teeth and, hidden within its throat, a second set of jaws that lunges forward to drag struggling prey down into its gut, a mechanism so nightmarish it inspired the imaginations of monster designers in cinema. Consider the reef sharks that patrol the deeper channels, their bodies engineered across 400 million years into instruments of detection so sensitive they can perceive the faint electrical pulse of a heartbeat buried beneath the sand. Consider the titan triggerfish, deceptively slow and seemingly indifferent, which will nonetheless charge a diver who strays too close to its nest with a fury and a set of teeth capable of shattering coral and drawing blood in an instant. These are not curiosities. They are the products of an evolutionary process that has spent countless generations sharpening each species into an efficient and unforgiving killing machine, or into something so well defended that killing it is more trouble than it is worth. The engine driving all of this is the arms race, the endless competition in which every advantage on one side is answered by a countermeasure on the other. When a predator evolves a faster strike, its prey evolves a quicker escape. When prey develops a poison, a predator eventually develops immunity, and the poison grows stronger still. This is why the venom of the Red Sea's most dangerous species is not merely potent, but extraordinarily complex, a chemical archive of ancient battles fought and won across millions of years. It is why camouflage here is not simple concealment, but an art form, with creatures matching not only the color, but the texture and even the movement of their surroundings. And it is why the hunting strategies we will explore are not blunt instruments, but sophisticated, layered tactics, involving deception, ambush, cooperation, patience, and explosive violence delivered in fractions of a second. Nothing in this sea is accidental. Everything is the residue of a competition with no finish line. What makes the Red Sea especially remarkable as a stage for this drama is its isolation, connected to the wider ocean only by the narrow strait of Bab el-Mandeb at its southern end, and cut off from the Mediterranean until the artificial gash of the Suez Canal was carved in the 19th century. This sea has long functioned as a world apart. Its creatures have evolved in relative seclusion, producing endemic species found in no other ocean, each one tailored by local pressures into forms that are subtly and sometimes shockingly unique. The warmth of the water accelerates metabolism and intensifies the pace of life. The high salinity demands physiological resilience, and the sheer density of the reef packs predator and prey together into a proximity that leaves little room for error. The result is an ecosystem that feels almost alien, an otherworldly ocean where the rules of survival have been pushed to their most extreme conclusions. So, as we prepare to descend, understand that what awaits is not a gentle tour of a coral garden. It is an expedition into a realm governed by appetite and armament, where the most beautiful creatures are frequently the most dangerous, and where survival is purchased daily through violence, cunning, and chemistry. We will move deeper with each passing chapter, from the venomous ambushers hidden in plain sight to the apex hunters that command the open blue, uncovering the mechanisms of harm that make each of them a master of its trade. We will examine how they hunt, how they defend, and how they have earned their place in a sea that shows no mercy. For beneath the shimmering surface of this radiant water lies a battlefield as old as life itself, and in the pages of this story we will meet the creatures who have mastered it. The Red Sea is beautiful. It is also, without question, one of the deadliest arenas on Earth. Consider first the geography that shapes this deadly stage, for the Red Sea is no ordinary body of water. Stretching nearly 1,900 kilometers between the arid coasts of Africa and the Arabian Peninsula, it is a narrow, elongated basin born from the slow tearing of continental plates, a wound in the Earth's crust that continues to widen even now. Its waters are among the warmest and saltiest of any sea on the planet, with surface temperatures that can climb past 30 degrees Celsius and salinity levels that would exhaust lesser organisms. There are no rivers feeding into it, no great freshwater arteries diluting its chemistry, and so it evaporates relentlessly under a punishing sun, concentrating its salt and forging conditions that demand extraordinary adaptation from every creature that calls it home. This is an ocean sealed off, isolated, and evolutionarily unique, where thousands of species exist nowhere else on Earth. And it is precisely this isolation that has made the Red Sea a crucible of specialization. When a marine world is cut off from the wider ocean, its inhabitants are forced to compete for a finite arena, refining their tools of predation and defense within a closed laboratory of survival. The coral reefs that fringe its shores are cathedrals of biodiversity, teeming ramparts of limestone raised over millennia, and within their labyrinthine corridors hides an armory of biological weaponry so varied and so refined that it rivals anything found in the tropics of the Pacific or the deep trenches of the Atlantic. Here the hunter and the hunted have danced for countless generations, each escalation in offense answered by a corresponding leap in defense, producing creatures armed with venom, camouflage, speed, and jaws engineered for a single merciless purpose. To descend into these waters is to enter a place where danger wears 1,000 disguises. A stone resting innocently on the seabed may in truth be a fish whose spines carry a venom potent enough to kill a grown adult in agonizing hours. A ribbon of color drifting lazily among the coral may be a creature whose bite delivers a neurotoxin against which there is no reliable antidote. Even the smallest and most unassuming inhabitants conceal mechanisms of harm honed to lethal precision, and it is this constant deception, this gap between appearance and consequence, that defines the character of the Red Sea. Nothing here is quite what it seems, and the price of misjudgment is measured in blood. So we begin our descent through the layers of this armored world, moving from the shallow, sunlit gardens where venom and camouflage reign supreme, down into the deeper blue where speed and raw power take command. Each creature we encounter will reveal another facet of nature's endless arms race, another weapon perfected across the slow grind of evolutionary time. Watch closely, for in the Red Sea, survival is never accidental. It is engineered. Among the countless disguises worn by the creatures of the Red Sea, none is more perfect, more chillingly complete than that of the stonefish. It is, by scientific consensus, the most venomous fish in the world, and yet it announces itself with none of the warning colors that decorate so many of its lethal neighbors. There are no flamboyant stripes here, no electric hues broadcasting danger to the reef. Instead, there is only stillness, only the flawless imitation of the seabed itself, a living rock that breathes, that waits, and that kills. To swim above a stonefish is to swim above a loaded weapon that has erased itself from view, and it is this absence of any visible threat that makes it perhaps the most insidious predator in the entire basin. The creature belongs to the genus Sinancea, and in the Red Sea it is most often the reef stonefish that lurks among the shallows, a squat and misshapen animal rarely exceeding 40 centimeters in length. Its body is a masterpiece of ugliness, if such a phrase can be permitted, for everything about its form serves the single purpose of vanishing. The skin is warty and encrusted, mottled in shades of brown, gray, and dull red, often overgrown with a fine coating of algae and sediment that further dissolves its outline into the surrounding rubble. Its head is broad and lumpen, its mouth a great upturned slit angled toward the sky, and its eyes sit high upon the skull, protruding just enough to survey the water above, while the rest of the body remains pressed into the substrate. There is no elegance in this design, no streamlined beauty, only the grim efficiency of an ambush hunter that has traded grace for absolute invisibility. When it settles onto the reef and wriggles itself partway into the sand, it becomes, for all practical purposes, indistinguishable from the stones that give it its name. This is a creature of the shallows, and that fact alone elevates its danger to a level few other animals can match. While many of the Red Sea's most fearsome predators keep to the deeper blue or the outer walls of the reef, the stonefish haunts precisely those places where life is most abundant and where human feet are most likely to tread. It favors rocky bottoms, coral rubble, tidal pools, and the sandy patches between reef outcrops, often in water so shallow that it can be left partially exposed at low tide, capable of surviving out of water for hours through its ability to breathe across its skin. It does not roam. It does not patrol. It chooses a spot and it commits to it, sometimes remaining motionless in the same position for days on end, allowing sand and silt to drift over its body until even a trained eye passing directly overhead would register nothing more than another feature of the reef floor. Patience is its greatest asset, and in the warm, shallow gardens of the Red Sea it has all the patience in the world. For while the stonefish appears utterly inert, it is anything but passive in intent. This stillness is not laziness but strategy, the coiled tension of a trap set and waiting to be sprung. Small fish, shrimp, and other unwary reef dwellers move constantly through these shallows, drawn to the same crevices and sandy hollows that the stonefish has claimed, and it is upon these creatures that the ambush is unleashed. When a victim strays within range, the stonefish reveals the terrible speed hidden beneath its rock-like torpor. That great upturned mouth, which had seemed merely a grotesque feature of its face, snaps open in an explosion of suction, engulfing the prey in a movement so fast that it defies the human eye. Studies of related stonefish have clocked this strike at a fraction of a second, among the swiftest feeding motions recorded in any fish. a blur of violence erupting from what only an instant before had been an inanimate stone. The victim is drawn into the cavernous mouth and swallowed whole before it can even register that the seabed beneath it has come alive. Then, just as suddenly, the stonefish resettles, resumes its disguise, and returns to the appearance of harmless rock, its ambush complete and its presence once again erased. Yet as formidable as its hunting prowess may be, it is not the stonefish's mouth that has earned it its infamous reputation, nor its diet of small reef creatures that makes it one of the most feared animals in these waters. The true weapon of the stonefish lies along its back, hidden within the very camouflage that conceals its body. Running down its spine are 13 stout dorsal spines, each one a rigid, needle-sharp instrument connected at its base to a pair of venom glands. These spines lie flattened and unremarkable while the fish is at rest, but the moment the animal feels threatened, they lock upright into a bristling defensive palisade, each spine capable of driving through skin, through the sole of a shoe, and deep into the flesh of anything that presses down upon it. This is the crucial and terrifying point, for unlike a venomous snake that must choose to strike, the stonefish does not need to attack at all. Its venom is delivered passively by the simple misfortune of a foot or a hand descending upon a spine that the victim never saw. The animal defends itself without moving, without warning, and without any intention beyond survival. The venom itself is a devastating cocktail of proteins, chief among them a compound that attacks the body with brutal precision, and the effect upon a human being is among the most excruciating experiences the natural world can inflict. The pain is immediate and overwhelming, described by survivors as so intense that it can drive a person to the brink of madness, radiating outward from the wound in waves that no ordinary painkiller can subdue. The venom triggers swelling, tissue death around the injury, and a cascade of systemic effects that can include a plummeting blood pressure, disrupted heart rhythm, difficulty breathing, paralysis, and in severe cases, shock and death. The greater the number of spines that penetrate the flesh, the greater the dose delivered, and the more dire the outcome. Without prompt treatment, a serious envenomation can prove fatal within hours, and even those who survive may endure lingering pain and complications for weeks or months afterward, the affected limb sometimes never fully recovering its former function. The immediate remedy, remarkably, is heat, for the venom is composed of proteins that begin to break down at high temperatures, and immersing the wound in water as hot as can be tolerated offers some measure of relief while medical help is sought. An antivenom does exist, one of the few developed for a fish, a testament to just how genuinely dangerous this creature is regarded by those who share its waters. But the true defense against the stonefish is not medicine at all. It is awareness, the simple and vital knowledge that in the shallow, rocky gardens of the Red Sea, not every stone is a stone, and that the seabed itself may be watching, waiting, armed with a chemistry refined across untold millions of years for the singular purpose of survival. And here we glimpse the deeper logic of this armored world, for the stonefish embodies the very principle that governs the entire basin. It has abandoned speed as a means of escape, abandoned armor plating and flashing warnings, and invested everything into two opposing but complementary strategies: the perfect concealment that allows it to hunt, and the passive venom that ensures nothing dares to hunt it. It is at once a hidden hunter and an untouchable fortress, a creature that has weaponized stillness itself. In the closed laboratory of the Red Sea, where every advantage is contested and every weakness exploited, the stonefish has emerged as one of evolution's most complete and merciless designs, a rock that kills, waiting patiently in the shallows for the world to make its fatal mistake. Yet if the stonefish rules the seabed through absolute stillness, there exists in the same waters a hunter that has chosen the opposite path entirely, mastering not concealment but motion, not patience but calculated aggression. To move from the rock that kills to this next predator is to travel from the floor of the reef into the open blue that hangs above it, where the currents run stronger and the light bends into shafts that pierce the water column, and where the rules of survival shift from hiding to speed, from ambush to relentless pursuit. But before we ascend into that open hunting ground, it is worth pausing on the sheer scale of the stonefish's achievement, for its venom is not merely dangerous but ranks among the most agonizing compounds ever documented in the marine world. The proteins delivered through those dorsal spines act directly on the nervous system and the muscles, triggering pain so overwhelming that survivors have described the sensation as unbearable, a burning that races up the limb within minutes and can bring on swelling, paralysis, and in the most severe encounters, cardiac failure. The dosage depends on pressure, on how heavily an unlucky foot comes down upon those hidden needles, and the deeper the strike, the greater the flood of toxin released into the wound. What makes this weapon so extraordinary is its dual purpose, because the same chemistry that repels a predator also serves as a warning etched in suffering, a lesson so severe that any creature surviving a single encounter will never again mistake that mottled shape for harmless stone. Evolution has thus armed the stonefish with a punishment so memorable that it defends not only the individual, but reinforces caution across generations of would-be attackers, turning a single sting into a message carried through the entire ecosystem. The reef sharks, the larger groupers, the rays that patrol the shallows, all of them navigate around a threat they cannot see but have learned through the brutal arithmetic of pain to respect. And so the stonefish endures, unbothered by the passage of tides and seasons, its body layered in algae and sediment until it becomes indistinguishable from the ground it rests upon, its eyes fixed upward, its mouth ready to open in a strike measured in fractions of a second, faster than the human eye can register, swallowing prey whole before the surrounding water has even settled. It embodies the paradox at the heart of this basin, a place where the greatest violence is often the quietest, where the deadliest creatures are frequently the ones that never move at all, and where the true measure of a predator lies not in its ferocity, but in the perfection of its design. For in the Red Sea, survival has never rewarded the loud or the obvious, but rather the refined, the specialized, the patient architects of death who have carved out their advantage over millions of years of isolation and competition. The stonefish stands as proof that stillness can be a weapon as fearsome as any set of teeth, that camouflage can be as deadly as speed, and that in this sun-warmed and salt-laden sea, the difference between the living and the dead can rest entirely upon the ability to recognize a threat that has spent its entire evolutionary history perfecting the art of remaining unseen. Rising from the reef in a slow, deliberate drift comes a creature that seems almost too extravagant for a world governed by concealment, its body fanned out in bands of maroon and cream, its fins spread like the wings of some undersea bird, trailing filaments that ripple with every subtle movement of the current. This is the lionfish, and where the stonefish survives by vanishing into the seabed, the lionfish thrives by doing the exact opposite, announcing its presence with a display so striking, so theatrical, that it appears to challenge the ocean to look away. Yet this flamboyance is no accident of vanity, for every ornate feather of fin and every needle-thin spine conceals a purpose, and the lionfish, for all its ballroom elegance, ranks among the most efficient and dangerous predators to patrol the coral shallows of the Red Sea. To To watch one is to witness a paradox in motion, a fish that seems designed by a painter rather than by evolution, its long dorsal spines rising in a crown above its back, its pectoral fins sweeping outward in broad, ribbon-like fans that catch the shifting light and dissolve the outline of its body into a shimmering blur. Those flowing extensions serve two functions at once, softening the creature's silhouette so that prey cannot easily judge where the fish ends and the water begins, while simultaneously flaunting a warning as ancient as color itself. The bold contrast of dark stripes against pale flesh is a language spoken across the reef, a visual siren that broadcasts a single message to every animal capable of reading it, that this beauty carries a price, that to approach is to risk agony, and that the graceful dancer before you is armed with a defense as potent as any weapon in the basin. The lionfish makes its home among the reef's most intricate architecture, threading through the coral heads and drifting along the shaded overhangs where the light grows dim and the rock folds into crevices and hollows. During the brighter hours, it often tucks itself into the recesses beneath ledges, hanging motionless in the gloom with its head angled downward, conserving its energy while the reef bustles around it. It favors the transition zones, the seams where the reef meets the sand, where structure gives way to open ground, and where smaller fish gather in loose, unwary shoals. Here the lionfish holds a position of quiet dominance, moving with a slow, almost lazy propulsion that belies the precision of the hunter beneath the ornament, patrolling its territory with the unhurried confidence of a predator that has little reason to fear the creatures around it. When it hunts, the display that first appears purely decorative reveals its true and calculated genius. The lionfish does not chase its prey across the reef in a frantic burst, for it has no need of such crude pursuit. Instead, it advances with maddening patience, spreading those broad pectoral fins into a living net, using them to shepherd and corral its target, cutting off avenues of escape and steering the smaller fish steadily toward a corner of rock or an open patch of sand where there is nowhere left to flee. The wide fins create the illusion of a wall, a shifting barrier that the panicked prey instinctively avoids, and in avoiding it, the victim funnels itself into precisely the position the lionfish intends. It is a slow ballet of entrapment, a hunt conducted less through speed than through geometry, the predator patiently reshaping the water around its meal until the outcome is inevitable. And then comes the strike, and it arrives with a violence that shatters the languid rhythm of everything that preceded it. In a movement almost too fast for the eye to follow, the lionfish opens its enormous mouth and generates a sudden, powerful vacuum, an implosion of pressure that drags the surrounding water inward and sweeps the cornered fish into its gullet in a single instant. The prey is swallowed whole, drawn in before it can even register that the wall of fins has become a mouth, and the entire sequence, from the first slow herding to the final devouring suction, unfolds with the cold efficiency of a machine built for one purpose. This lunge can happen in a fraction of a second, so swift that the shoal nearby may not even scatter, the disappearance of one of their number registering only as a ripple in the sand and a settling of disturbed sediment. Such lethal capability, delivered through a strike that expends almost no energy, allows the lionfish to hunt continuously and to grow abundant wherever conditions favor it, and this appetite has consequences that reach far beyond the reefs of the Red Sea. In its native waters, the lionfish exists within a balance forged over countless generations, its numbers held in check by the pressures of an ecosystem that evolved alongside it. But this same creature has become one of the ocean's most notorious invaders in distant seas, where it has been introduced beyond its natural range, and where the local prey species have no inherited memory of its herding fins and vacuum strike. In those foreign reefs, it multiplies unchecked, devouring native fish at a rate that can strip a reef of its smaller inhabitants, a testament to just how perfectly its hunting design functions when unopposed. The lionfish is, in this sense, a portrait of what happens when a specialist predator is removed from the arms race that shaped it and set loose among the unprepared. Yet it is the second half of its armament, the defense rather than the attack, that has earned the lionfish its formidable reputation and its place among the venomous elite of this sea. Rising along its back stand a series of long dorsal spines, slender and sharp, and flanking them are additional spines set within its pelvic and anal fins, each one grooved and connected to glandular tissue capable of delivering venom deep into any creature foolish enough to press against them. Unlike the teeth of a shark or the crushing jaws of a grouper, these spines are purely defensive instruments, weapons the lionfish never uses to capture food but reserves entirely for the moment a threat draws too near. When a predator or an unwary diver makes contact, the outer sheath covering the spine is pushed down, exposing the venom glands and driving the toxin into the wound with the force of the puncture itself. The result is a sting that arrives with startling ferocity, an immediate and intense pain that radiates outward from the point of entry, often accompanied by swelling, throbbing, and a burning sensation that can persist for hours. In more serious encounters, the venom provokes nausea, difficulty breathing, sweating, and a debilitating weakness that can leave a victim shaken long after the initial contact. And while it is rarely fatal to a healthy human, the experience is severe enough to serve as an unforgettable deterrent. For the smaller predators of the reef, the lesson is even more absolute, a single encounter teaching a permanent respect that ensures the lionfish is left largely unmolested, free to drift through the coral in its vivid regalia while the creatures around it give it a careful and instinctive birth. Here then is the elegant logic of the lionfish laid bare, a predator that has united spectacle and lethality into a single form, its flowing fins doubling as both hunting net and warning banner, its beauty functioning not in spite of its danger but as an inseparable expression of it. Where the stonefish disappears into the seabed and waits, the lionfish glides openly through the reef, daring the world to notice it, secure in the knowledge that its crown of venomous spines makes concealment unnecessary. It stands as another master of the Red Sea's ruthless design, a creature whose every graceful gesture is underwritten by threat, and it reminds us that in this basin of relentless competition, the most captivating sight is often the one most laced with peril, and that here, more than anywhere, beauty and death have learned to move as one. Within the shadowed hollows of the reef, where the coral fractures into caves and the rock faces are riddled with narrow black openings, there waits a predator that betrays its presence only through the slow, rhythmic gaping of a mouth. This is the Moray eel, a creature so often dismissed as a passive resident of the crevices that its true nature comes as a genuine shock to those who witness it in motion. Where the stonefish vanished into the seabed and the lionfish paraded its venom in open water, the Moray occupies a different niche entirely, a serpentine ambush hunter that has turned the labyrinth of the reef into a fortress and a hunting ground in equal measure. Underestimated, misunderstood, and frequently maligned, it is among the most formidable of the Red Sea's concealed killers, and its unassuming stare hides a ferocity that few reef dwellers ever anticipate until it is far too late. To understand the Moray is to first reckon with its body, an elongated muscular column that can stretch to more than 2 meters in the largest species found within these waters. Unlike the flattened, scaled forms of most fish, The moray moves with the sinuous grace of a snake, its skin smooth and coated in a thick protective mucus rather than overlapping scales, a covering that helps it slide effortlessly through the jagged interior of the reef without injury. Many species wear striking patterns across their length, mottled browns and greens, honeycomb reticulations, or bold speckling that dissolves them into the dappled light and shadow of the coral, while others carry a uniform dark coloration that renders them nearly invisible in the depths of their hollows. Yet whatever the pattern, the defining feature of the moray sits at the front of that long body, a set of powerful jaws lined with teeth that curve backward like a row of hooks, needle sharp and designed for a single purpose, to seize and to hold whatever passes within reach. The moray does not roam the open reef in search of prey, nor does it drift conspicuously through the water like the lionfish. Instead, it selects a den, a fissure in the rock, or a gap beneath a coral head, and from that stronghold it surveys the surrounding water with eyes that see poorly in the gloom, but with a sense of smell so acute that it can detect a faint chemical trace of a wounded or hidden fish from a considerable distance. Concealment is its entire strategy, and its habitat is chosen precisely for the cover it provides, allowing the eel to remain almost fully hidden with only its head protruding, jaws working open and shut in a motion that appears menacing, but in fact serves a mundane purpose, drawing water across its gills so that it may breathe. That constant gaping, so often mistaken for aggression, is simply respiration, and it is one of the many ways the moray is misread, for the creature is not threatening as it waits, only patient, and patience is the foundation of everything it does. When the moment arrives, the transformation is startling. A fish, an octopus, or a crustacean drifts too close to the den, and the moray erupts from its hiding place with a speed that seems impossible for so heavy a body, lunging outward in a single explosive strike that closes the distance before the prey can register the threat. Those backward curving teeth sink into flesh and lock the victim in place, for the geometry of the dentition allows nothing to pull free once it is seized, every struggle only driving the prey deeper against the hooks. But it is here that the moray reveals a mechanism so extraordinary that it has few parallels anywhere in the marine world, a second act of violence hidden within the throat itself. Deep in the eel's gullet sits a second set of jaws, the pharyngeal jaws, ordinarily held back near the base of the skull, and in the instant after the first bite, these hidden jaws surge forward into the mouth, clamp onto the trapped prey, and drag it backward down the throat in a swift internal seizure. This is a feature that borders on the nightmarish, a predator whose bite does not end at the visible mouth but continues inward with a second hidden weapon, effectively giving the moray two independent sets of teeth working in sequence. For most fish, swallowing large prey requires a powerful suction created by rapidly expanding the mouth cavity, a method that demands open water and space, but the moray, confined within the tight architecture of the reef, cannot rely on such a strike. Its pharyngeal jaws solve this problem with brutal efficiency, allowing it to swallow struggling prey without ever needing to leave the safety of its den or release the initial grip. The prey, already locked by the outer teeth and unable to escape, is ratcheted inexorably inward by the second set of jaws, and what began as a single lunge concludes as an unbroken, mechanical descent into the eel's body, a two-stage killing that leaves no window for escape once the outer bite has found its mark. The raw force of that bite deserves particular attention, for the moray's reputation for danger rests as much on the power of its jaws as on the speed of its strike. Those muscular heads generate a crushing pressure capable of severing the tough shells of crustaceans and the resilient flesh of larger fish, and the teeth, angled and serrated in some species, tear rather than simply hold, inflicting wounds that are ragged, deep, and slow to heal. Divers who reach carelessly into a crevice or attempt to feed a moray have learned this the hard way, sustaining lacerations that shred tissue and expose bone, injuries made worse by the eel's instinct to hold and thrash rather than release, so that a defensive bite becomes a tearing wound as the animal twists its body in an attempt to break free of what it has seized. Compounding the danger, the moray's mouth harbors an abundance of bacteria, and even a modest bite can develop into a serious infection if left untreated, transforming a moment of carelessness into a lingering medical ordeal. Nor is the moray content to rely on a single ambush point, for some species have learned to hunt with a cunning that further belies their reputation as sluggish cave dwellers. Certain moray eels will leave their dens under cover of night and thread their long bodies through the coral matrix, reaching into crevices that no open water predator could ever access, flushing out fish and invertebrates from the very refuges in which they had sought safety. In this way, the moray inverts the entire logic of the reef, turning the shelters that protect countless small creatures into corridors of pursuit, its elongated form allowing it to follow prey into hiding places that would stop any other hunter cold. There is even evidence that morays cooperate with other predators on occasion, driving fish from the coral into open water where a partner can seize them, a rare and sophisticated collaboration that speaks to an intelligence often overlooked in a creature so easily caricatured. Here, then, is the moray eel in its full and formidable dimension, a hidden hunter whose menacing gape is merely breathing, whose apparent laziness masks explosive speed, and whose bite arrives not once but twice, first at the mouth and then within the throat, in a sequence that few victims ever survive. It is a predator perfectly engineered for a world of caves and crevices, exploiting the very architecture that shelters the reef's smaller inhabitants and turning it into a maze from which there is no clean escape. In a sea where beauty so often conceals lethal intent, the moray reminds us that danger also lurks in the plainest of forms, waiting in the dark with a patience that is itself a kind of weapon, another master of ambush in an ocean that rewards nothing so richly as the perfection of the hunt. Not every killer in the Red Sea announces itself with venomous spines or a crushing jaw. Some arrive so quietly, dressed so exquisitely, that a swimmer might slip one into a pocket the way a child pockets a pretty stone, never suspecting that the object cradled in the palm carries enough venom to stop a human heart. This is the cone snail, and it is perhaps the most deceptive assassin in the entire sea, a creature whose lethality is written nowhere on its surface, hidden instead within a soft body and a single terrible tooth. Where the stonefish hides in plain sight and the moray lurks in the dark, the cone snail conceals its danger inside beauty itself, wrapping a sophisticated chemical arsenal in one of the most coveted shells the ocean has ever produced. To look at a cone snail is to admire a work of natural artistry rather than to recognize a predator. Its shell is smooth and conical, tapering to a fine point at one end and flaring open at the other, and across that polished surface run intricate patterns of brown, orange, black, and cream, arranged in mottled tents, fine reticulated lines, or bold marbled swirls that seem almost painted by a deliberate hand. Collectors have prized these shells for centuries, and some of the rarest specimens have changed hands for extraordinary sums, admired in cabinets and display cases the world over as objects of pure elegance. Yet that very allure is a trap, for the shells most likely to tempt a curious hand are those attached to living animals, and it is the living animal, not the empty shell, that harbors the weapon. The beauty is genuine, but it is also a fatal advertisement, drawing the unwary toward a creature whose calm exterior betrays nothing of the violence it can unleash in a fraction of a second. Across the Red Sea, cone snails inhabit precisely the places where people are most likely to encounter them, and this is what makes them so quietly perilous. They favor the shallows, the sun-warmed sandy flats, the rubble beds, and the shaded undersides of coral rocks where a slow-moving mollusk can bury itself and wait. Many spend the daylight hours submerged beneath the sediment, only the tip of the shell or a slender siphon betraying their presence, emerging under the cover of night to prowl across the seabed in search of prey. Because they thrive in the very reef margins and tidal zones that snorkelers wade through and beachcombers scour for treasures, the odds of a chance meeting rise sharply, and unlike a fish that flees at the first sign of a shadow, the cone snail neither retreats nor threatens. It simply remains disguised as a jewel among the sand, its stillness the first stage of an ambush that most victims never see coming. The mechanism of that ambush is one of the most astonishing weapons in the marine world, a system so precise and so violent that it seems scarcely possible within so unhurried a body. Concealed within the snail is a specialized tooth, hollow and barbed, modified over evolutionary time from the ordinary rasping structures that other snails use to scrape algae, and transformed here into a disposable harpoon. When prey drifts within range, the snail extends a fleshy, tube-like proboscis, and at its tip it loads a single one of these hollow teeth like a dart into a blowpipe. Then, faster than the eye can follow, it fires, driving the barbed tooth deep into the flesh of its target and simultaneously injecting a dose of venom through the tooth's hollow core. The strike is so sudden that a small fish is paralyzed almost instantly, frozen mid-swim before it can even register the threat, and the snail, tethered to its impaled victim by the harpoon and its connecting thread, reels the meal in and engulfs it whole. What appears to be a sluggish and defenseless mollusk is in truth a spring-loaded predator armed with a projectile. The speed and efficiency of that strike would mean little without the chemistry that follows it, and it is here, in the venom itself, that the cone snail reveals its true genius. What it injects is not a single toxin but a cocktail of hundreds of distinct compounds known collectively as neurotoxins, a pharmacological arsenal so complex and so refined that scientists have spent decades attempting to catalog it. Each of these small peptides is engineered to interfere with a specific target in the nervous system, latching onto the delicate channels and receptors that nerve cells use to communicate. And by disrupting those pathways, the venom shuts down the body's ability to send and receive signals. Some neurotoxins block the channels that allow muscles to contract so that the prey is rendered instantly rigid or utterly limp. Others silence the transmission of pain or interrupt the signals that keep the heart and lungs working in their steady rhythm. Working in concert, this blend can immobilize a fish within seconds, and in the most dangerous species it can overwhelm a human nervous system with equal ruthlessness. The sophistication lies in the precision, for the cone snail does not simply flood its victim with a crude poison, but rather deploys a coordinated sequence of toxins that hit multiple points in the nervous system at once, each compound fitting its molecular target with a specificity that rivals the most advanced design drugs. This is why researchers have turned to neurotoxins with such intense interest, isolating individual peptides and studying them as potential medicines, and one such compound has already yielded a powerful painkiller many times stronger than morphine, extracted from a substance whose original purpose was to kill. That a creature crawling across the reef floor should carry within it a chemical library capable of both ending life and easing suffering is one of the sea's stranger ironies, a testament to how far the arms race of these enclosed waters has driven the evolution of chemical weaponry. For a human being, the consequences of that weaponry depend on the species, but the most dangerous cone snails, the fish hunters whose venom is potent enough to subdue a swift and struggling fish, are more than capable of killing a person. A sting from one of these may at first seem trivial, no more than a small puncture that produces little immediate pain, and this deceptive mildness is part of what makes them so dangerous, for the victim may not grasp the seriousness of what has happened until the venom begins its work. Numbness spreads outward from the wound, then a creeping paralysis takes hold of the muscles, vision may blur and speech may fail, and in the gravest cases the paralysis reaches the muscles of respiration, so that a person can suffocate while fully conscious, their body unable to draw breath even as the mind remains clear. There is no antivenom for a cone snail sting, and the only treatment is to keep the victim breathing by artificial means until the toxins are gradually cleared from the body, an ordeal that may last for hours. So the cone snail takes its place among the Red Sea's masters of deception, a predator that has abandoned brute strength and open menace in favor of patience, disguise, and chemical perfection. It does not lunge from a crevice or bristle with obvious spines, but hides its lethality within the smooth and beautiful architecture of its shell, waiting motionless in the sand until the moment its harpoon can fly. In a sea already crowded with venom and violence, it represents a different and in some ways more unsettling strategy, one in which the most sophisticated killing is done silently, invisibly, and slowly, through molecules engineered to unravel the nervous system thread by thread. Where the stonefish trusts to camouflage and the lionfish to spectacle, the cone snail trusts to the alchemy of its venom, proving once again that in these waters the deadliest weapons are often the ones that reveal nothing at all until it is far too late. Coiling through the warm currents of the Red Sea, moving with a grace that no land-dwelling serpent could ever achieve, glides a creature that carries within its slender body some of the most concentrated venom on the planet. The sea snake is a true marine reptile, a lineage that turned its back on the land and committed itself entirely to the water, and in doing so it became something both familiar and utterly alien, a serpent that no longer crawls but swims, that no longer basks on stone but drifts through liquid blue. Descended from ancestors that once slithered across the ground, these animals have surrendered almost every trace of their terrestrial past, remaking their bodies over countless generations into instruments suited only for the sea, until returning to land became for many of them a near impossibility, a place where they move awkwardly and helplessly, exiles from the element that made them. To understand how completely the sea has reshaped them, one need only look at the tail, for while an ordinary snake tapers to a simple point, the sea snake ends in a broad, flattened paddle, an oar of living muscle that sweeps side to side and drives the animal forward through the water with surprising speed and control. This single adaptation transformed the serpent from a creature of the ground into a creature of the current, and around it the rest of the body followed suit. The trunk itself often laterally compressed to cut cleanly through the water, the nostrils fitted with valves that seal shut against the sea, and the lungs stretched along much of the body's length to serve as both an organ of breath and a reservoir of buoyancy. Many species wear striking bands of color, rings of black and pale yellow or gray encircling the body in bold alternating patterns, markings that in the shifting light of the reef serve both as camouflage among the shadows and, in some cases, as a warning to any predator experienced enough to recognize the danger they signal. Yet for all this menace, The mouth of a sea snake is a modest thing, for unlike the vipers of the land with their long, hinged, retractable fangs, the sea snake carries only small, fixed fangs set near the front of its jaw, short and unassuming teeth that betray nothing of the potency they deliver. This is the first of the great deceptions surrounding these animals, the disparity between the smallness of the weapon and the enormity of its effect. For the modest fang is merely the delivery point for a venom of extraordinary strength, a chemical payload so refined that it requires no great wound to accomplish its work. A bite may leave marks so faint as to be almost invisible, a pair of tiny punctures easily overlooked, and this understatement is precisely what makes the sea snake so dangerous, for the animal rarely announces its power through the appearance of its bite. These serpents range widely through the Red Sea and the broader Indo-Pacific waters that connect to it, cruising through the open blue and threading their way among the coral heads and rocky crevices of the reef, equally at home in the sunlit shallows and in the deeper realms below. Some species are capable of impressive dives, descending far beneath the surface in pursuit of prey or shelter, and remaining submerged for extended periods thanks to that elongated lung and to a remarkable ability in certain species to absorb oxygen directly through the skin, drawing dissolved gas from the water itself to supplement each breath of air. This capacity to linger below allows them to hunt patiently in the labyrinth of the reef, slipping into gaps and hollows where other predators cannot follow, exploring the dark recesses of the coral with a probing, questing head that seeks out the hidden and the cornered. It is in these crevices that the sea snake's hunting method reveals itself, for these are not pursuit predators of the open sea, but rather searchers and ambushers of the enclosed spaces, specialists at extracting prey from the very hiding places that were meant to keep it safe. The snake pushes its narrow head into holes and cracks in the reef, into burrows and beneath ledges, seeking out the small fish and eels that shelter there, believing themselves secure, and when it finds its quarry, it strikes, seizing the fish and delivering with that small fixed fang a dose of venom that begins its work almost at once. The prey may struggle briefly, but the outcome is rarely in doubt, for the venom of the sea snake is a neurotoxin of devastating efficiency, a compound that attacks the nervous system directly, blocking the signals that pass between nerve and muscle until the victim can no longer move, can no longer swim, can no longer resist. Paralysis spreads through the fish, and the snake in no hurry swallows its immobilized meal whole, the venom continuing to break down resistance from within. The efficiency of this venom is not accidental, for it is the product of the same relentless evolutionary pressure that has sharpened every weapon in these waters, an arms race that rewards speed of incapacitation above all else. In the enclosed reef, where a wounded but still mobile fish could easily dart into a gap and vanish forever, the predator that can shut down its prey in an instant enjoys an overwhelming advantage, and so the sea snake's evolved venoms that act with brutal quickness, striking the nervous system with a precision that leaves little chance of escape. What emerged from this pressure is a chemistry so potent that it ranks among the most toxic of any serpent anywhere on Earth, and here lies the most sobering fact of all. For the venom of many sea snakes far exceeds in raw potency that of the most feared snakes of the land. Drop for drop, the venom of certain sea snakes is many times more powerful than that of the cobras and vipers, whose reputations dominate the terrestrial world, a toxicity so extreme that only a minute quantity is required to prove fatal to a creature many thousands of times the size of the intended prey. That such lethal chemistry should be housed in an animal often no thicker than a human arm, delivered through fangs barely large enough to break the skin, is one of the ocean's most unnerving truths, a reminder that in the sea the deadliest attributes are rarely the most obvious ones, And yet, for all this fearsome capacity, the sea snake is not an aggressor toward humankind, for these are generally curious rather than hostile animals, and the majority of the venom carried in a defensive bite is often withheld, so that a great many encounters end with no envenomation at all, the snake choosing to conserve the precious weapon it has evolved for hunting rather than expending it on a creature far too large to eat. But when the full measure of that venom is delivered, the consequences unfold with quiet horror, for the neurotoxin that stills a fish in the reef acts upon a human nervous system with the same ruthless logic. The bite itself may cause little pain and little swelling, a false calm that mirrors the deceptive mildness of the cone snail's sting, and then, over the following hours, the poison begins its slow dismantling of the body, bringing aching muscles, drooping eyelids, difficulty in swallowing and speaking, and at last the creeping paralysis of the muscles that sustain breath. In this, the sea snake joins the ranks of the Red Sea's most refined assassins, a serpent that abandoned the land to become a hunter of the reef's hidden spaces, wielding a weapon whose true power lies concealed behind a small fang, a gentle bite, and the deceptive beauty of a banded body drifting through the deep. Yet for all the sea snake's lethal potential, there is a creature drifting through these same waters, whose weapon operates on an entirely different principle, one that trades the concentrated chemistry of a single bite for a diffuse and shimmering curtain of pain. The box jellyfish and its smaller, more insidious relatives haunt the warmer shallows and open water of the Red Sea, and in appearance they seem to be nothing at all, mere ghosts of the sea, translucent bells trailing threads so fine they vanish against the blue. There is no face to fear, no jaw to fix upon, no obvious mechanism of harm, only a soft pulsing dome and a fringe of gossamer filaments that seem more suited to decoration than destruction. And that is precisely the deception, because along every one of those trailing tentacles lie millions of microscopic cells, each a coiled harpoon primed to fire the instant it brushes against living skin. The mechanism is one of the fastest known in the natural world, a spring-loaded stinging capsule that detonates in a fraction of a millisecond, driving a hollow barbed thread through the flesh and flooding the wound with venom before the victim has even registered contact. A single tentacle sweeping across a limb triggers not one but thousands of these firings in an instant, and the venom they carry attacks the heart, the nervous system, and the skin all at once, producing pain so immediate and overwhelming that swimmers have been known to lose the capacity for coordinated movement in the water. In this, the jellyfish surpasses even the serpent, for it need not choose to strike, need not aim, need not conserve its arsenal, but delivers its full measure the moment flesh meets thread, an automatic and indiscriminate weapon that turns the gentlest drifting animal into one of the most feared inhabitants of the reef. What makes these creatures more unsettling still is their near invisibility, for the box jellyfish carries no bright warning colors, no bold pattern to signal danger, only a body so clear that it disappears entirely in bright water. A diver may pass within inches and never see it, may feel the sting before the eye can find its source, and by then the damage is already spreading. The fortunate encounter ends with searing welts that trace the path of the tentacles across the skin like the lash of a whip, marks that can linger for weeks. The unfortunate encounter, when enough venom enters the body at once, can bring the heart to a standstill within minutes, faster than any land predator, faster even than the cone snail whose poison stalks its victim in silence. Here the ocean reveals its most economical brutality, a hunter that has dispensed with the brain, the eye, and the deliberate intent that guide every other predator, and replaced them with pure reflexive machinery that answers only to touch. Where the jellyfish surrenders all intent to reflex, The next hunter of the Red Sea reclaims it entirely, marrying raw speed to deliberate precision in a body engineered like a living blade. The barracuda cuts through the open water and the outer margins of the reef as one of the most recognizable predators in the sea, a fish whose very silhouette announces menace long before it moves. Elongated and streamlined to an almost mechanical perfection, it is shaped less like an animal than like a weapon, a torpedo of muscle sheathed in silver, built for a single purpose that it pursues with terrifying efficiency. And unlike the drifting ghosts and buried ambushers that came before, the barracuda does not conceal itself in camouflage or lie in wait beneath the sand, for it hunts in the open, trusting entirely in the explosive velocity that has made it one of the fastest short-distance killers on the reef. The body of the barracuda tells the whole story of how it lives. Long and cylindrical, tapering to a forked tail that drives it forward with immense thrust, it is clad in scales of polished silver that catch and scatter the light, so that in bright water it can shimmer into near invisibility or flash suddenly as it turns. The head is drawn out into a pointed snout, and beneath it juts a prominent lower jaw that projects forward like the prow of a ship, giving the fish a permanent expression of cold and predatory intent. But it is the mouth itself that transforms the barracuda from a swift swimmer into a dedicated killer. For when those jaws part, they reveal a nightmare of teeth, rows of them, some small and needle-fine for gripping, others large and flattened into dagger-like blades set in sockets, so that each fits neatly between the teeth of the opposing jaw. This arrangement is not for chewing, and it is not for holding, but for shearing, allowing the barracuda to slice cleanly through the body of its prey as though it were drawing a pair of scissors closed. Across the Red Sea, the barracuda occupies a range that spans both the open blue and the busy edges of the coral, patrolling the drop-offs where reef meets deep water and cruising the sunlit shallows in search of movement. The younger fish gather in great glittering schools, hundreds or even thousands of individuals wheeling together in tight, swirling formations that can spiral into towering columns, a spectacle that draws divers from across the world. There is a strange safety in these gatherings, a collective vigilance that shields the smaller members from larger threats, and the schools themselves can act as roving hunting parties, herding bait fish against the reef or the surface. Yet, as the barracuda matures, it grows increasingly solitary, and the largest specimens, which can exceed 1.5 meters in length, tend to hunt alone, hanging motionless in the current like suspended blades before vanishing in a blur. It is this lone, adult, silent and watchful that embodies the pure essence of the species, a single-minded predator that needs no companions to feed. The hunting strategy of the barracuda is a study in stored violence, a contrast between stillness and sudden fury that defines nearly every successful kill. For long stretches it will simply drift, holding position with almost imperceptible movements of its fins, its silver flanks blending into the shimmer of the water, while its eyes track the movement of fish around it. It watches, it calculates, and it waits, allowing its target to draw closer or to turn in a moment of inattention, and in that instant the entire body becomes a single coiled spring. When the strike comes, it is almost too fast for the eye to follow, an explosive burst of acceleration that can carry the fish forward at speeds approaching 40 kilometers an hour in the space of a heartbeat, closing the distance to its prey before the victim has any chance to flee. There is no chase in the traditional sense, no prolonged pursuit across the reef, only a single devastating rush that either succeeds or fails within the span of a second, for the barracuda relies not on stamina but on the sheer shock of its initial acceleration. And it is in the moment of contact that the barracuda reveals the full horror of its design, because those interlocking rows of teeth do not merely grip the prey, they sever it. Where other predators must seize their catch and work it down whole, the barracuda strikes with such force and such cutting power that it frequently slices its victim clean in two, taking a single massive bite that severs the body and leaves the remainder to be gathered afterward. This is precision born of overwhelming force, an attack that targets the midsection of the prey where the vital organs cluster, and a single closing of those blade-like jaws can destroy the heart, the gut, and the spine in one stroke, ending the struggle before it can begin. A wounded fish that has lost half its body has no capacity to escape, no ability even to swim, and so the barracuda can afford to strike once, retreat, and return at leisure to consume what it has cut down. It is a method of hunting that combines the speed of the swiftest predators with a butcher's efficiency, and it makes the barracuda one of the most formidable killers to patrol these waters. That same efficiency, tuned over countless generations to intercept and dismember fast-moving prey, carries with it a rare and unsettling relevance to human beings. For the barracuda is one of the few reef predators capable of inflicting serious injury on a person, even without any true intent to attack. The danger arises not from aggression, but from the fish's own reflexive machinery, its instinct to strike at anything small, bright, and flashing that moves suddenly through the water. A diver wearing a glinting piece of metal, a watch, a knife, or a shining ring can in murky or turbulent conditions momentarily resemble the darting silver of a baitfish, and the barracuda, hardwired to react to that flash with an instant lunge, may strike before it has fully identified its target. The result is a single slashing bite delivered with the same shearing power that dismembers its natural prey, capable of opening a deep and ragged wound in an instant. These encounters are rare, and the barracuda almost never presses a second attack once it recognizes its mistake. Yet the speed and severity of that one accidental strike underscore just how little margin the sea allows to those who share its water. So the barracuda takes its place in this widening gallery of the Red Sea specialists, and it does so by embodying a wholly different philosophy of killing from those that came before, where the stonefish waited in perfect stillness and the cone snail crept upon its victim in silence, where the jellyfish surrendered all control to the blind reflex of a stinging cell. The barracuda commits entirely to the open confrontation of speed and precision, a hunter that hides nothing and needs nothing but the explosive power of its own body and the terrible geometry of its teeth. It is proof that in this closed and competitive sea, survival has been solved not once but 1,000 times over, each solution as effective and as ruthless as the last, and that even in the bright and open water, far from the crevices and camouflage of the reef, there is no such thing as a safe stretch of ocean. And yet the arsenal is not exhausted, for beyond the spearfisher's blade waits a predator whose scale and reputation eclipse them all. There is a moment on every Red Sea reef when the smaller fish fall silent, when the schools compress and the movement drains away from the open water, and it is in that sudden stillness that the true rulers of this ecosystem announce themselves. The reef sharks glide into view with a fluid inevitability that no other predator in these waters can match, and where the barracuda relies on a single explosive burst and the stonefish on absolute stillness, the shark carries its authority in every unhurried stroke of its tail. It does not need to hide, and it does not need to rush, for it sits at the very summit of this drama, the enforcer that holds the entire delicate machinery of the reef in balance. Every creature profiled before it exists in some sense in the shadow of this animal, and to understand the Red Sea's arsenal fully is to arrive at last at the predator that all the others must reckon with. The body of a reef shark is a masterpiece of hydrodynamic engineering, a design so thoroughly refined by hundreds of millions of years of oceanic pressure that it has scarcely needed to change. Its form is a smooth torpedo, tapering at both ends, sheathed in skin that is not smooth at all but covered in microscopic tooth-like scales called dermal denticles, which reduce drag and allow the animal to slip through the water almost without sound. The tail is a powerful crescent that drives it forward with economical thrust, while the pectoral fins hold it steady and let it bank and turn with the ease of a bird riding a current. Beneath this streamlined exterior lies a skeleton not of bone but of cartilage, lighter and more flexible than any bony frame, granting the shark both buoyancy and agility that a heavier body could never afford. Everything about its shape is subordinated to a single purpose, and that purpose is the efficient location and destruction of prey. To move through the reef in perpetual patrol, the reef shark relies on a suite of senses so acute that they border on the supernatural. Its nostrils are constantly sampling the water, capable of detecting the faintest chemical trace of blood or bodily fluids diffused across enormous distances, so that a single wounded fish may as well be broadcasting its location across the entire reef. Along its flanks runs the lateral line, a series of fluid-filled canals studded with sensory hair cells that register the smallest vibrations and pressure changes, allowing the shark to feel the frantic struggles of a distressed animal long before it can see it. And most remarkable of all are the ampullae of Lorenzini, tiny gel-filled pores clustered across the snout that detect the faint electrical fields generated by the muscles and nerves of every living creature, so that even a fish buried in sand or hidden in darkness cannot escape notice. The shark, in effect, reads the reef through invisible signals, hunting by scent, by sound, and by the electric pulse of life itself. These animals do not wander aimlessly through the Red Sea but establish territories along the reef systems, patrolling favored stretches of wall and drop-off with a persistence that makes them a constant presence in the waters they claim. Some species keep to the shallow lagoons and the coral gardens near the surface, while others favor the deeper edges where the reef plunges into blue oblivion, and each has adapted its patrol to the particular corridors where prey is most likely to be caught. They are creatures of routine and repetition, returning again and again to the same channels and outcrops, learning the geography of their domain until they know every crevice where a fish might shelter and every ledge from which one might dart into the open. This intimate knowledge of their range, combined with their tireless movement, means that little happens on the reef without a shark eventually becoming aware of it, and the smaller inhabitants live their entire lives under the watchful patrol of a predator that never truly rests. When the hunt begins in earnest, it unfolds as a cascade of escalating detection, each sense narrowing the search until the target is fixed. A distant trace of scent draws the shark into a wide, deliberate approach, its body sweeping through slow arcs as it works its way up the invisible gradient toward the source. The lateral line begins to register movement, refining the direction, and as the shark closes the final distance, the electroreceptors take over, pinpointing the exact position of the prey even in murk or shadow. And then, in the last instant, the deliberation vanishes and the shark commits. The unhurried patrol becomes a sudden acceleration, the powerful tail driving the body forward in a rush that closes the gap before the prey can react, and the jaws open wide as the animal launches into the strike. What began as a patient search collapses into a single moment of overwhelming violence, the culmination of every sense the shark possesses focused upon one point in the water. It is in the mechanics of the bite that the reef shark reveals the full measure of its power. The jaws themselves are not rigidly fixed to the skull but are loosely suspended, so that at the moment of attack the upper jaw can thrust forward and outward, extending the reach of the mouth and driving the teeth ahead of the body like a weapon flung forward. Those teeth are arranged in multiple rows, and behind every functional tooth waits a replacement ready to rotate into place as the front ones wear or break, so that the shark carries an inexhaustible supply of cutting edges throughout its life. Each tooth is honed to a razor point, and in many species the edges are finely serrated, turning the closing of the jaws into the action of a saw drawn across flesh. When those jaws snap shut, they do so with a bite force capable of shearing through muscle, cartilage, and bone alike, and the shark reinforces the cut by thrashing its head from side to side, using the serrations to carve away a clean mouthful even from prey far larger than itself. The consequence of this design is a wound of catastrophic proportions, an injury that inflicts massive tissue damage in a single application of force. Where the barracuda sivers with the clean shear of interlocking blades, the shark tears and saws, its serrated teeth and violent head movement excavating deep, ragged wounds that subdue large prey almost instantly through shock and blood loss. Prey that might resist a lesser attacker is overwhelmed by the sheer scale of the trauma, unable to flee or fight with vital structures torn open in the first strike. This is not the delicate precision of the ambush hunter, but the brute authority of the apex predator, a killer equipped to bring down animals that other predators would never dare to challenge. And it is this raw power that secures the shark's place at the very top of the reef's hierarchy. And so the reef shark stands as the enforcer of the Red Sea's fragile order, the predator whose constant patrol shapes the behavior of every creature beneath it, and whose appetite keeps the populations of the reef in check. It embodies a philosophy of killing that owes nothing to disguise or venom, relying instead on unmatched sensory awareness married to a body built for pursuit and jaws built for destruction. In this closed and competitive sea, where survival has been solved 1,000 different ways, the shark represents the oldest and most enduring solution of all, refined over a span of time that dwarfs every other specialist in this gallery. Yet even the shark does not command these waters alone, for the reef holds still greater predators, larger and more formidable, waiting in the deeper blue beyond the coral. On the sunlit floor of the Red Sea, in the open stretches of sand and rubble where nothing seems to move, there lies a predator so perfectly hidden that a diver may drift within centimeters of it and never suspect its presence. This is the crocodile fish, a creature far less celebrated than the stonefish or the lionfish, yet belonging to the same lineage of ambush artists whose survival depends not on speed or strength, but on the total erasure of their own outline. Where the more famous killers of this sea announce their danger through venom or command it through raw power, the crocodile fish belongs to a quieter, more patient tradition, one in which the weapon is not a spine or a jaw of teeth, but the illusion of empty ground. It is a master of deception in a sea already crowded with deceivers, and in the arms race that defines these waters, its refinement of camouflage places it among the most successful of all the reef's hidden hunters. To understand how it vanishes so completely, one must first look at the body itself, for the crocodile fish has been shaped by evolution into something that scarcely resembles a fish at all. Its form is flattened from top to bottom, pressed low against the substrate as though the animal were designed to become part of it, and its head is broad and wide, tapering forward into a long snout that has earned the creature its reptilian name. The resemblance to a crocodile is not merely superficial, for the head is set with eyes positioned high on the skull, allowing the animal to lie buried in stillness while watching the water above. Across the entire surface of its body runs a mottled pattern of browns, grays, and sandy yellows, broken into irregular blotches and speckles that mimic the scattered texture of coral rubble and grains of sediment. The skin is further disrupted by fleshy tassels and skin flaps, small growths that break up the telltale lines of a living animal and soften its silhouette until it dissolves entirely into the seabed. Even the eyes, which might otherwise betray it as prey passes overhead, are veiled by intricate lacy flaps of tissue that hang over the pupil like a frayed curtain, scattering the light and hiding the one feature that could reveal a watching hunter. This extraordinary disguise would be wasted in open water, and so the crocodile fish has bound its entire existence to the places where its camouflage can work. It favors the sandy bottoms and the low patches of coral that fringe the reef, the transitional zones between the vivid architecture of the coral heads and the barren expanse of the seafloor. Here it settles into position and does something that few predators have the discipline to sustain, for it simply stops moving. It presses itself against the sand or drapes itself across a slab of dead coral, and it remains there, motionless, sometimes for hours, allowing drifting sediment to settle over its back and blur the last faint edges of its shape. In this state, it becomes virtually invisible, indistinguishable from the rubble around it, a section of the seafloor that happens to be alive and hungry. Small fish swim above it without alarm. Shrimp and crabs scuttle past its snout, and the ordinary traffic of the reef flows over and around a killer that has erased itself from the visible world. The stillness is not laziness, but strategy, the same principle that governs the stonefish taken and perfected in a slender, wide-headed form built for a single explosive moment. That moment is the entire purpose of the crocodile fish's patient masquerade, and everything about its concealment exists to serve the strike. As unsuspecting prey drifts into range, drawn ever closer by the absence of any visible threat, the predator gauges the distance with those high-set, curtained eyes, calculating the precise instant when escape will become impossible. It does not stalk, it does not chase, it does not reveal itself by so much as a twitch of a fin. Instead, it waits until the victim crosses the invisible threshold, until the small fish hovers directly before that broad, flattened head, and then, without warning, the seabed erupts. In a single convulsive movement, the crocodile fish launches upward and forward, its wide mouth gaping open to create a sudden rush of inward flowing water, and the prey is swept into the cavernous jaws before it can register that the ground itself has come to life. What had appeared to be an inert patch of rubble becomes, in a fraction of a second, a lunging mass of muscle and open mouth, and the transformation is so abrupt and so total that the victim's instincts have no time to respond. The speed of this attack is the crocodile fish's true weapon, a burst of acceleration measured in mere thousandths of a second that leaves the surrounding water still swirling long after the strike is complete. The mechanism depends on the same suction principle that powers so many ambush predators of the reef, for as the mouth snaps open, the volume within it expands with such violence that the pressure drops instantly, dragging in everything immediately ahead of it in an irresistible current. The prey is not so much caught as inhaled, pulled into the darkness of the throat by a vacuum it cannot fight against, and the jaws close behind it to seal the trap. There is no struggle, no pursuit, no second chance for the doomed fish, because the entire encounter has unfolded faster than the nervous system of the victim can process the threat. Precision matters as much as speed, for the crocodile fish commits its energy in a single decisive lunge, and it must time that lunge to the exact heartbeat when the prey is centered and reachable. Miss, and the effort is wasted, the ambush blown, the disguise briefly broken. Succeed, and the meal is secured before any alarm can ripple outward across the reef. What makes the crocodile fish so formidable is the seamlessness between its two contrasting states, the way it moves from absolute stillness to overwhelming violence with nothing in between. For the small creatures of the sandy shallows, there is no gradual warning, no shadow gathering, no dawning sense of danger that might grant a fraction of a second to flee. There is only the untroubled seabed one moment, and the closing dark of the predator's throat the next, and in that instant the illusion that has protected the crocodile fish for hours pays its ultimate dividend. This is deception carried to its logical extreme, a hunting philosophy in which the kill is decided long before the strike, won in the patient hours of stillness, during which the animal became part of the landscape and the prey learned to ignore it. By the time the lunge comes, the outcome is already sealed because the victim never perceived that a hunter was present at all. And so the crocodile fish takes its place in the Red Sea's gallery of specialists as a quieter counterpart to the reef's more notorious killers, proof that in these competitive waters concealment can be as lethal as venom and patience as deadly as speed. It shares with the stonefish the genius of disappearing into the seabed, yet it trades that creature's passive defense for an active and explosive hunt, a lunge that turns invisibility into a weapon of attack. In a sea where every survivor has mastered some singular art, the crocodile fish has perfected the oldest deception of all, the trick of simply not being seen, and it demonstrates once more that beneath the beauty of this ocean lies a battlefield in which the most dangerous predators are often the ones no eye can find. If the crocodile fish proves that stillness can kill, then the next resident of the Red Sea reveals that some hunters need no camouflage at all, because their weapon is written across their skin as a warning rather than a disguise. The lionfish drifts through the reef in open defiance of every rule of concealment, wearing a coat of bold vermilion and ivory bands that seem designed to catch the eye rather than escape it, its long fan-like fins spread wide like the plumage of some impossible bird. Where the stonefish and the crocodile fish vanish into the substrate, the lionfish advertises itself, and that boldness is the first clue that this creature carries a defense potent enough to make advertisement a virtue rather than a liability. It favors the crevices and overhangs of the coral wall, the shaded ledges and wreck interiors where it can hang almost motionless in the water column during the day, and it emerges with greater confidence as the light fails and its prey grows careless. Those flowing pectoral fins, so beautiful to the human observer, serve a ruthless purpose in the hunt, because the lionfish uses them to herd small fish and shrimp into corners, spreading them like a net to cut off every avenue of escape before it strikes. When the moment arrives, the strike is astonishingly quick, a sudden expansion of the jaws that generates a vacuum, drawing the victim whole into the mouth in a fraction of a second, so fast that the surrounding shoal barely registers that one of their number has vanished. Yet the true genius of the lionfish lies not in its flamboyant hunting, but in the crown of venomous spines it carries along its back and flanks, a battery of up to 18 needle-sharp rays, each grooved and loaded with a potent toxin. This venom is not a hunting tool but a shield, a guarantee that few predators will ever dare to test the creature that wears such conspicuous colors, and the bright banding becomes not vanity but a billboard, a signal understood across the reef that this meal comes at a terrible price. For a human who blunders into those spines, the result is immediate and searing, a pain that radiates through the limb and can bring swelling, nausea, and hours of agony, though it rarely proves fatal. And so the lionfish stands as the reef's most elegant paradox, a predator that hides nothing and fears little, proof that in this ocean the deadliest survivors are not always the ones that disappear, but sometimes the ones bold enough to be seen. Where the lionfish wears its danger openly and the crocodile fish hides it beneath the sand, the next inhabitant of the Red Sea carries no venom at all, yet earns a reputation as one of the most feared creatures a diver can encounter, not through toxin or camouflage, but through sheer belligerence. The triggerfish appears at first glance like nothing more than a decorative ornament of the reef, an oval-bodied swimmer draped in patterns so intricate they seem painted by a careful hand, and few who see it drifting lazily over the coral would guess that this fish is capable of driving a fully grown human out of the water in a panicked retreat. Yet beneath that placid exterior lies a temperament so aggressive that many who dive the coral walls of the Red Sea come to fear the triggerfish more than the sharks, and its story is a lesson in how courage and fury can serve as weapons every bit as potent as fangs or spines. The body of the triggerfish is compressed and disc-shaped, built for maneuvering with precision through the tight architecture of the reef rather than for outright speed, and it is often clothed in some of the most striking coloration the ocean can offer. The Titan triggerfish, the largest and most notorious of its kind in these waters, can reach the length of a man's arm and wears a mottled coat of olive and yellow punctuated by dark seams that trace the edges of its scales, while smaller relatives flaunt bolder designs of electric blue lines, sunbursts of orange, and delicate cross-hatching that seems almost geometric in its precision. Its small mouth sits at the tip of a blunt face, and its eyes are set high and far back on the head, an adaptation that allows the fish to keep watch on the world around it even while its jaws are occupied at close quarters with the hard prey it favors. It moves not by beating its tail, but by rippling the soft dorsal and anal fins along its back and belly, a curious undulating propulsion that lets it hover, reverse, and pivot with uncanny control. The name itself comes from the most remarkable feature of its anatomy, a mechanism that gives the creature its extraordinary title. Along the top of its back sits a spine that can be raised and then locked rigidly into place by a second, smaller spine that slots behind it like the catch of a firearm. And this arrangement is the trigger that gives the fish its name. When threatened by a larger predator, the triggerfish can dart into a crevice in the coral and erect this spine, wedging itself so firmly into the crack that no jaw can dislodge it, an anchor of bone that turns the reef itself into a fortress. To release the lock, the fish must depress the smaller trigger spine, and only then does the primary spine fold flat once more, allowing it to slip free. It is a piece of natural engineering as elegant as any in the sea, a defensive tool that transforms a vulnerable moment into an impregnable stand. Yet it is not this locking spine that gives the triggerfish its fearsome name among those who share the water with it, but rather its extraordinary devotion to its territory. When the breeding season arrives, the female excavates a shallow depression in the sand or rubble of the reef floor, a crater in which she deposits her eggs, and from that moment she becomes an implacable guardian of the ground around it. What makes the triggerfish so dangerous is the shape of the territory she defends, because rather than guarding a simple circle of seabed, she patrols a cone of water that widens upward from the nest toward the surface. A diver swimming what appears to be a safe distance overhead may in fact be directly above the eggs and squarely within the defended zone, unaware that they have crossed an invisible boundary until the guardian below decides that the intrusion will not be tolerated. The response when it comes is swift and utterly without hesitation. The triggerfish rises from its nest and charges, a compact bundle of muscle and fury driving straight at the intruder with its dorsal spine raised and its jaws working, and it presses the attack with a persistence that catches even experienced divers off guard. It will circle, feint, and bite, snapping at fins, exposed skin, and equipment with a boldness entirely out of proportion to its size, and it does not relent until the trespasser has retreated well beyond the edge of that upward widening cone. Many who flee do so in the wrong direction, swimming toward the surface and thereby moving deeper into the heart of the defended territory rather than out of it, which only intensifies the assault. The correct escape is to swim low and horizontal, away from the nest along the seabed, but in the panic of the moment few remember this, and the triggerfish presses its advantage against the confusion of its far larger opponent. The true reason to respect this creature lies in the weapon it carries in its jaws, for the small mouth that seems so unassuming conceals a set of teeth built for crushing and cutting through the toughest materials the reef can offer. The triggerfish is a specialist in hard-shelled prey, feeding on crabs, mollusks, sea urchins, and coral, and to break through such armored defenses it possesses a battery of strong, chisel-like teeth set into powerful jaws capable of exerting tremendous force. It has been observed flipping sea urchins over to attack their vulnerable undersides and blasting jets of water to unearth prey buried in the sand. Tactics that reveal an intelligence and problem-solving capacity uncommon among reef fish. Those same jaws, designed by evolution to shatter shell and pulverize spine, are what meet the flesh of an intruder who lingers too long above the nest, and the resulting bite can tear through a wetsuit, sever the webbing of a fin, and inflict a deep and painful wound that bleeds freely in the water. There is no venom in that bite, no toxin to spread through the limb or race toward the heart, and in this the triggerfish stands apart from nearly every other predator profiled in these depths. Its danger is purely mechanical, a matter of muscle, bone, and unyielding will, and yet the wounds it delivers can be severe, requiring stitches and carrying the risk of infection from the bacteria that thrive in warm reef waters. What makes the encounter so memorable is not the lethality but the sheer audacity of it. The spectacle of a fish no larger than a dinner plate driving a diver into full retreat through nothing but relentless aggression and the readiness to back it with a genuinely dangerous bite. And so the triggerfish reveals yet another face of survival in this crowded and competitive sea, proof that a creature need not hide, poison, or grow to monstrous size to command respect, for it has instead perfected the weapon of pure defiance. In an ocean where so many hunters rely on stealth or venom, the triggerfish thrives on the opposite principle entirely, meeting every threat head-on and defending its young with a courage that transforms a beautiful reef ornament into one of the most confrontational animals in the Red Sea. Where the triggerfish announces itself through motion and aggression, the scorpionfish does the precise opposite, dissolving into the reef until it ceases to exist as a recognizable animal at all. It is a close relative of the stonefish and the lionfish, sharing with them the same lineage of venomous ambush hunters, yet it occupies a middle ground between their extremes, neither as perfectly formless as the stonefish, nor as flamboyantly advertised as the lionfish. It is instead a creature of textured deception, a fish whose entire body has been sculpted by evolution to imitate the encrusted surfaces of the Red Sea floor, and in that imitation it hides a weapon capable of turning a careless touch into hours of agony. To look upon a scorpionfish, if one can find it at all, is to see a lump of living rock. Its body is broad and heavily built, covered in a mottled patchwork of browns, reds, ochres, and grays that shift and mingle to match whatever backdrop it has chosen, and its skin is broken by warty growths, ragged flaps, and fringed appendages that mimic algae, sponge, and coral debris. The outline that would betray a normal fish is deliberately shattered by these irregular protrusions, so that even the sharp eye of a predator or a diver sliding past at close range registers nothing more than another bump on the reef. Its eyes sit high on the head, cast in the same disruptive coloration, and its wide mouth curves downward in a permanent frown framed by tassels of skin that further erase any sense of a face. Along its back rises a row of dorsal spines, unremarkable at a glance, stiff and slender and easily mistaken for splinters of dead coral, and it is precisely these that carry the danger. The scorpion fish is a sedentary animal, a bottom dweller that spends the vast majority of its life motionless, and this stillness is not laziness but strategy. It favors rocky crevices, ledges, and outcrops where its textured body can press against a matching surface, though it will also settle onto sandy or rubble-strewn patches at the base of the reef, wherever it can lower its metabolism and weight. Distributed widely through the shallow coastal waters and coral gardens of the Red Sea, it seldom ventures far, occupying a small territory for extended periods and moving only when hunger, disturbance, or the pressure of competition compels it. This tendency to remain rooted in one place is exactly what makes it so hazardous to humans, for a fish that does not flee is a fish that a wading foot or a steadying hand may find without warning, and the scorpion fish will not move aside to spare an intruder the consequence. When prey approaches, the transformation is instantaneous and shocking in its speed. The scorpion fish is patient beyond measure, allowing small fish, shrimp, and other crustaceans to drift ever closer to the pit of its disguised mouth, and it makes no move to pursue, trusting entirely in the ignorance of its victim. Then, in a fraction of a second, the enormous mouth flings open, and the sudden expansion of the oral cavity creates a violent inrush of water, a vacuum so powerful that the prey is drawn helplessly inward and swallowed whole before it can register the danger. This gulping strike is one of the fastest movements in the animal kingdom, over almost before it has begun, and it leaves the scorpion fish once again settled in place, indistinguishable from the surrounding stone, its hunt concluded without so much as a chase. The economy of the method is total, expending almost no energy while extracting maximum reward, a hunting philosophy built entirely on invisibility and explosive timing. Yet it is not the mouth that has earned the scorpion fish its fearsome reputation, but the spines that line its back and, in some measure, its pelvic and anal fins as well. Each of these dorsal spines is grooved and connected at its base to a pair of venom glands, and when pressure is applied to the spine, the surrounding tissue is compressed and the venom is driven up the groove and into the wound. There is nothing deliberate about this delivery in the way a striking snake chooses its target, for the scorpion fish does not attack in aggression, it defends in reflex, and the mechanism works only when the spine is pressed into flesh. But the outcome, from the perspective of the unlucky victim, is no less severe for being passive. The moment the skin is pierced, venom floods the tissue, and the pain that follows is described by those who have endured it as immediate, intense, and radiating, spreading outward from the puncture with a burning ferocity that swells and throbs for hours. The venom itself is a complex mixture of proteins that attack the body on several fronts, and while it is generally regarded as less lethal than that of its formidable cousin, the stonefish, it is dangerous in its own right and should never be dismissed. Envenomation typically produces excruciating localized pain accompanied by rapid swelling, redness, and inflammation around the wound, and in more serious cases, the effects extend well beyond the injury site. Victims may experience nausea, vomiting, sweating, a racing or irregular heartbeat, difficulty breathing, muscular weakness, and a collapse in blood pressure, symptoms that reflect the venom's capacity to disrupt both the cardiovascular and neuromuscular systems. The severity depends on the number of spines involved, the volume of venom injected, and the sensitivity of the individual. But even a single puncture can incapacitate a grown adult, and in vulnerable people or those who receive multiple stings can escalate into a genuine medical emergency requiring urgent intervention. Treatment relies on immersing the affected area in water as hot as can be tolerated without scalding, a method that helps to break down the heat-sensitive components of the venom and ease the searing pain, followed by careful cleaning of the wound and monitoring for the systemic symptoms that signal a more serious reaction. The greatest danger in these encounters is not always the venom alone, but the shock and disorientation it can induce. For a diver or swimmer struck in deep water may panic, lose coordination, or struggle to reach the surface while the pain floods through the limb. And because the scorpionfish is so perfectly hidden, so utterly convincing in its disguise as a lump of harmless reef, the sting almost always arrives without any warning at all, delivered to a hand placed carelessly on a ledge or a foot lowered onto what appeared to be nothing more than stone. In this, the scorpionfish embodies a recurring truth of the Red Sea, that the most dangerous inhabitants are often the ones a diver never sees, the specialists who have abandoned speed and spectacle in favor of stillness and concealment, and who arm that concealment with a chemistry of pain. It does not hunt humans, it does not pursue, it does not display its threat as the lionfish does with its flowing banners of warning coloration. It simply waits, wrapped in a costume of coral and rock, trusting that its patience will bring prey within reach, and that its venom will punish anyone unwise enough to disturb it. To move through its domain is to move blind among hidden weapons, and the scorpionfish, motionless and unremarkable, remains one of the most quietly formidable predators lying in wait beneath these deceptively tranquil waters. Every creature we have followed through these waters belongs to a single vast composition, a symphony written not in sound but in venom and speed, in disguise and ambush, in the endless pressure of one life feeding upon another. From the stonefish crouched invisible on the seabed to the reef sharks patrolling the deeper blue, each has emerged as a specialist honed by an unbroken arms race. And now, having traced their weapons one by one, we can hear how their separate voices combine into a single overwhelming chorus of survival. The Red Sea does not produce dangerous animals by accident. It manufactures them, generation after generation, in a closed and superheated laboratory where isolation, salinity, and fierce competition have driven adaptation to extremes rarely matched anywhere else on the planet. Consider what we have witnessed. The stonefish, crowned the most venomous fish in the world, delivering through 13 dorsal spines a chemistry so agonizing it can kill, while presenting itself as nothing more than a weathered stone. The lionfish, opposite in strategy yet equally armed, wearing its danger openly in a blaze of banners and venomous rays, herding its prey with theatrical fins before the vacuum of its strike. The Moray eel, hidden in crevices with its second set of pharyngeal jaws waiting to drag prey backward into the dark. The cone snail, beautiful enough to tempt a human hand, firing a harpoon loaded with a paralyzing cocktail against which no antivenom exists. Each of these is a different answer to the same question, the question every organism in these waters must ask, which is how to eat without being eaten. And the answers accumulate. The sea snake, a reptile returned to the ocean, breathing through elongated lungs and swimming with a flattened paddle of a tail, carrying neurotoxins potent enough to still a fish in seconds yet restrained enough that it rarely turns them against us. The barracuda, all streamlined muscle and interlocking blades capable of severing a victim in a single explosive burst of acceleration. The reef shark, engineered across hundreds of millions of years into a sensory machine that reads chemical trails, electrical fields, and the faintest tremor of a struggling body long before its serrated, self-replacing teeth ever close. The crocodile fish and the scorpion fish, masters of vanishing, dissolving into sand and coral until the moment their prey drifts too near and the world erupts in a flash of suction and pain. The triggerfish defending its nest with a ferocity out of all proportion to its size. Every one of them is a variation on the same relentless theme. What binds them together is not merely that they are dangerous, it is that their danger is a mirror. Predation and defense are not separate forces in this ocean, but two faces of the same evolutionary pressure, each driving the other forward in a spiral that never rests. The venom that kills prey also punishes the attacker. The camouflage that hides a hunter also shields it from being hunted. The speed that captures a meal is the same speed that escapes becoming one. In the Red Sea, offense and defense have grown so tightly intertwined that they can no longer be cleanly separated, and that entanglement is precisely what has produced such a dense concentration of extraordinary and lethal specialists in one enclosed body of water. This is why the colors deceive us. Everything about the sea invites the eye and lulls the mind. The reefs glow with impossible hues. The water clarity is famous among divers the world over, and the surface lies so tranquil and inviting that it seems almost designed for human pleasure. Yet nearly every vivid pattern we have examined carries a second meaning. The brightness is a warning or a lure or a disguise. The stillness of a stone is a hunter conserving its strike. The graceful drift of a fin is a strategy for cornering prey. Beauty here is not decorative, it is functional, and its function is very often to kill or to survive being killed, which in this ocean amount to the same imperative pursued from opposite directions. Nature reveals in this place a kind of ingenuity that borders on the unsettling. There is no designer at work, no intention guiding the outcome, and yet the results possess a precision that feels engineered. A venom gland tuned to a specific receptor in a fish's nervous system, a jaw built in 2 stages so that no prey once seized can pull free, skin flaps that break up an outline until a living animal becomes indistinguishable from rubble, electroreceptors sensitive enough to detect the heartbeat of a creature buried in sand. These are not crude tools. They are refinements accumulated across unfathomable spans of time, each one tested against failure, each survivor passing forward the traits that kept it alive one more day. The Red Sea is a museum of those survivors, a gallery of solutions so effective that they have persisted while countless alternatives vanished without trace. And so we arrive at the paradox that has haunted this entire journey. The Red Sea is at once one of the most breathtaking and one of the most quietly perilous environments on Earth. Its danger is not the roaring, obvious kind. It does not announce itself with storms or towering waves. It waits. It hides in a ledge, coils in a crevice, rests motionless on the floor, or glides silently at the edge of vision. The threat is intimate and precise, delivered by a single spine, a single tooth, a single harpoon, and it arrives most often to those who forget that beauty in this place is never a promise of safety. To move through these waters with awe but without respect is to misunderstand the very nature of what surrounds you. Yet there is a deeper harmony beneath all this menace, and it would be a mistake to leave these waters seeing only the killing. Every predator we have studied is also a keeper of balance. The sharks cull the weak and the sick, keeping prey populations vital. The venomous ambushers controlled the numbers of smaller reef dwellers. The barracudas and the eels shape the behavior of everything that shares their range. Remove any one voice from this symphony and the whole composition falters, populations swell and crash, reefs degrade, and the intricate web that has taken millions of years to weave begins to unravel. The danger and the balance are one and the same. The very lethality that makes these animals fearsome is what keeps the entire ecosystem alive and turning. That is the enduring power of the Red Sea's deadliest inhabitants. They are not simply threats to be avoided, but architects of a world in perpetual motion, a place where every moment is a negotiation between hunger and survival, where stillness can mean death and movement can invite it, where the line between hunter and hunted shifts with every heartbeat. Beneath that serene and shimmering surface, an ancient contest continues without pause, invisible to the casual eye, indifferent to human presence, playing out exactly as it has for millennia. We have named these creatures, traced their weapons, and stood in awe of their perfection. Yet the ocean that made them keeps its deeper secrets still. There are venoms not fully understood, behaviors rarely witnessed, and countless encounters that unfold in darkness far beyond our reach. The Red Sea remains, in the end, a place of profound mystery as much as profound danger, a vibrant and otherworldly ocean where lethal beauty is the currency of existence, and where the deadliest predators endure as living proof of what life becomes when survival is the only rule that